Welcome to Matt's Corner of Gem Cutting. For my next project, I'm going to be attempting to cut the largest stone that I've ever done. For reference, this is the biggest stone I've cut up to this point. It's a 30mm clear quartz. And next I will be cutting this huge piece, which is also clear quartz. The stone by itself right now weighs about 1.5 pounds. I expect it to cut over twice or around twice the width of this clear quartz that I've done before, and probably will be around 10 times the weight. It's just this massive chunk that I'll be cutting from. And with how long it took me to cut that other piece, which is much smaller than this, I know this is going to take a lot of hours to cut and polish. I'm cutting this quartz for Paul, who has a rock shop in southern Utah. He supplied the rough stone. I removed the mass part of my faceting machine to keep it from being covered in overspray during this stage of the cutting. I want to remove a lot of the excess material and give the stone a preform before I dop the stone. I begin by grinding a flat spot oriented about where I want the table of the stone to be. I use a trim saw to cut away some material around the edges of the piece to save a little time because it is a little quicker than grinding that material off, though I wasn't able to take off very much material this way. Back to the grinding wheel. I finished preforming the quartz by hand until it becomes close to the general shape that the cut stone will be. Things get quite messy with all of the grinding, so I wipe off my work area periodically as needed. Keeping the area clean reduces the likelihood of shards of the stone contaminating the finer grit laps that I will use later on. Those shards can cause deep scratching issues at stages when the cutting is supposed to be more fine. I especially don't like anything causing scratching issues when I get to the polishing stage, so it is good to keep things clean around the cutting area. With the preforming finished, I can measure and mark a central point. I use that as a guide for dopping the stone. I use super glue as the adhesive to dop the stone. Traditionally, wax is used for dopping, but being self-taught, I struggled early on trying to use wax. Most of the stones I dopped using wax came off during cutting. Super glue worked better for me at the time, and I got used to using it, so I just stuck with it. I start still using the 60 grit that I used for the hand preforming to cut the stone in the shape. I regularly don't start with a grit heavier than 320 and usually start at 600 on smaller stones, but given the stone size, the heavier grit is a much needed time saver for cutting away the excess bulk of the stone. I use this grit to roughen the shallowest set of facets that form the point, the girdle, and the first set of facets that meet the girdle. Moving on from the 60 grit, I wipe down my machine once again to clean off the overspray. I move up to a 320 grit to go back over the facets that I've already cut and finish roughing in the rest of the pavilion facets. This still is a pretty heavy grit, but it is a lot less rough than the 60 grit and will still cut fast enough on this large quartz to not drag on the cutting forever. All of the pavilion facets have been cut in. The surface of the stone is still very rough from the grit I was using. Finer grits leave the surface of the stone smoother, but also cut away materials a lot slower as well. This is why it is needed to go over this stone with several grits during the cutting process to be time efficient. After the stone has been cut in, finer grits are used to remove the deeper scratches from the heavier grits and aren't used for taking off very much material. Since all of the facets are very close to where they need to be, I jump all the way up to a 1500 grit lap to remove the 320 grit wear and prepare the stone for polishing. The 1500 grit scratches are fine enough that I can go straight to polish from there on this quartz. I use cerium oxide on a dark side lap for polishing. After 8 hours of polishing, I'm finally done with the pavilion side. Because the stone is so big, I went and got a slightly larger transfer block, which will hopefully be able to transfer the stone correctly. My largest cone dot is only 19 millimeters. Looks awfully small when compared to the quartz, so I'm going to be using epoxy in this transfer. I'm going to build up around the edge of the cone dot quite a ways to hopefully allow some relief for pressure on the tip of this stone. After having plenty of time for the epoxy to cure, I can remove the original dop and get to cutting the crown. I only want the bond of the first dop to be weakened by the heat, so I use a wet paper towel to help keep the stone and epoxy cool. I place one of the girdle facets flat on a master lap to get the alignment of the stone close for cutting the crown. There is a lot of material still to be removed, so I start all the way back with the 60 grit. I want to double check the alignment of the stone by cutting in all of the facets that cut parallel to the girdle. I only cut these in a little ways for checking alignment instead of cutting in all the way to form the girdle thickness. After cutting them all in, there is a step going up to the right which indicates that the rotation of the stone is not yet perfectly aligned. I can adjust the rotation with my Ultratech faceting machine by rotating the cheater dial. Rotating it counterclockwise rotates the stone counterclockwise as well. The step isn't really big, so a small adjustment should bring it in close to alignment. After adjusting alignment, I cut around the stone to check alignment again until it is perfect. Then I can finish cutting the first tier in close to the thickness that I want the girdle to be and roughen the rest of the crown facets.
Alright, so I had to stop the preform of the crown of the stone after my fourth tier of facets because I quickly realized that I have a problem. I am out of mast height for adjusting upwards for cutting shallower angles. The shallowest I'll be able to go with how big this stone is probably around 30 degrees on the angle for the crown. My last two tiers that I have are below that angle. In order to solve this, one thing you could do is you could make an adapter which attaches to the base plate so that the mast can be raised up, a little bit so that you get that extra height. But that's going to be not the easiest thing for me to make. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go back in on GemCAD and redesign the crown a little bit, just adjusting the angles so that my lowest angle will still be deep enough that I could cut it using my mast height. Just got one little fracture that's about to cut out. I plan on taking in the girdle about close to half the distance of what it is right now. But I'm going to call that good with the 60 grit. And after I redesign the crown a little bit, I'll just move on. Well, that was 5 hours on polishing the crown side alone. Last but not least, we can do the table.
Normally, I would use a 45-degree table adapter to cut the table facet, but knowing I would likely have that mast height issue as well using the 45-degree adapter on this large of a stone, I purchased a 90-degree table adapter to ensure I would have the mast height for cutting in the table. The finer grits will still remove a little bit of material, so I leave some space between the table and its meet points to be worked in.
And we just gotta get it off without damaging it. Since I used epoxy, I think I'll actually just put it in the oven, warm it up a little bit, and hope the heat will allow it to separate safely.
The epoxy softens and its bond becomes weaker as it gets warmer, so it is easy to remove the epoxy from the stone while it is hot. I left the stone in the oven for about 30 minutes at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. This softened the epoxy enough to be removed. That is looking so good. Now that we got it finished, let's get over to Paul and see his reaction. I bet he's gonna love it.
How you doing? It's good to see you. How are things going with you?
Oh, pretty good. I mean, I finally got your stone done. I brought my last biggest one just so I can show you for comparison.
Oh, can I see this? Wow, that's a beautiful stone. So yeah, I'm excited. Let's take a look. I don't know if I dare.
We'll see.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
Let's just hold it up.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Holy cow, that is amazing. That is amazing. I need a glove or something to pull that out, but oh my gosh, that is, seriously, that is everything that I hoped it would be and more. Oh my gosh, so let's compare, huh? So here's the comparison.
Yeah, the one I cut was 30 millimeters and this one's 61 and a half. But the weight is well over 10 times the size.
So how much does this weigh finished?
It was 1,160 carats, a little over half pound. And everyone wonders, is like, they're gonna ask this, it's like, what do you do when you have a stone that big?
That stone is gonna be part of a collection, so it'll be displayed as part of a collection. So, wow, I mean, seriously, just the light on there, just like blinding me, but very, very exciting, very beautiful. The number of facets and the refraction and the size is just incredible. Super, super cool. Thank you very much.